Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sleep On It, the podcast for sleeping your way to better health. I'm Naina.
And I'm Ying.
And I'm Komal.
Today we have Komal Keerthy. She is a upcoming senior at Case Western. She is a part of our team and she's been behind all the lovely art and media that you see on our wonderful social media pages. And today we're extremely excited to have her finally in front of this screen, and we're going to talk about all-nighters today.
Thanks for introducing me, Naina. Yeah, just a little bit about me. I am a senior at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm studying neuroscience and minoring in public policy and chemistry. Yeah, I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to be a part of this podcast, to work with such lovely ladies. It's definitely such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure working with you, Komal. And we always have so many great conversations behind the scenes and what it's like to be a college student nowadays. So we're so excited to chat with you about this subject that I think a lot of us have been experienced or have heard about.
Komal has suggested that she likes to stay up late, and of course, I'm a sleep doctor, so I can't help but ask, why so late? And this is how the conversation got started, and it just came up about the topic that she loves doing all-nighters before exams.
Loves.
I don't love it. I don't love all-nighters. Okay. So my experience with all-nighters, I think I've pulled maybe like a total of 10 in my lifetime of 21 years.
Hmm.
And most of them have been concentrated in college. And it's not that like I want to pull an all-nighter. I think it's my behavior leading up to, the decision that I have to make, like, do I pull an all-nighter or not? That really is indicative of whether I pull an all-nighter or not. So, yeah, I think like the deeper problem here is procrastination.
Mm.
Well, we're putting you on the spot and don't mean to do that, just teasing you. But the
Yeah,
truth
of course.
is, we've all pulled all-nighters. I know I've had my share of them, and Ying Ying does, and she still does, I think.
Um,
But it's, it could be, it could be related to procrastination, but I do think there might be some reasons physiologically why teenagers and college students and young adults like yourself may be more likely to pull all-nighters and sleep later into the evening and night. And one of those reasons could be is because, well, we know that there's a circadian shift that happens around puberty, and what happens is that at puberty, you're naturally inclined to just sleep at a later time. I mean, it's harder to sleep like you did normally around 10 or 11, and you're more inclined to sleep, later around 1 or 2. And that is because of the changes hormonally that are happening in your body at that time. And so that's one reason. So it's not all just behavioral, I think. I think part of it is just that your the chemical makeup isn't promoting sleep as it normally once was.
Yeah, do you think that, what age does that usually happen again, Nina?
Usually around puberty, and it could last up until early adulthood, but we don't, the research isn't exactly precise on when that shift goes back to a normal sleep time. But it's hypothesized that maybe in the 30s, but that's just a guess though.
I just, I think it's like counterintuitive, right? When our school schedules like become earlier when we go from middle school to high school, but like that's probably around the age when our circadian rhythm is like shifting. So I
That
feel like that needs to be taken into account.
Absolutely. And actually, the point that you just made is one of the most popular topics that is circulating in health advocacy and health policy right now. And there has been a big shift among the scientific community to sort of really lobby for later school times, knowing that well, why are kids waking up around 6 or 7 a.m. or often earlier to start school at 7 when their biological processes say that's probably still in the middle of their sleep? I mean, they're just not alert enough to really absorb the knowledge and be as active to participate in academics at that time. So I know certain states like Massachusetts and California are a little bit ahead of that curve in terms of trying to push that policy for later school start time. So that's definitely in the works, and I hope that does happen because I do think that it's going to make a big difference. I mean, I remember even anecdotally as a kid that I was very sleepy earlier in the morning. I mean, it was just it felt unnatural to wake up so early, even if you did go try to go to bed early. And I think it's just a reflection of the true biological process happening.
Well, people say it's because the parents, they have to go to work. So they usually have to wake up earlier, so it's much more aligned with their schedule to have their kids wake up earlier and go to school first before they go to work. So I think that's maybe why it's set up that way.
That's true, and it's there's a lot of social implications around school too that
Yeah.
I think are becoming more apparent during the quarantine. Like like you're mentioning, parents having to go to work earlier in the morning. It's easier for them to have to, not coordinate different times for pickup and drop off, and also the big industry of the extracurricular activities, like all those football and track and all the stuff that happens after school. So if you started later, it would be harder to have those activities go later into the evening, leaving little time for homework and stuff like that. And obviously, we know how important in this country, at least extracurriculars play for a lot of people in getting college admissions and college scholarships. So that's another big sort of reason I would imagine also.
Yeah, like I heard crazy stories about my cousins in China where they wake up super early, like 6 a.m. They go to school at 7:30, then they come home for like an hour to eat lunch at 12, and then they go back to school and they stay in school until 6 p.m. And then they have like after school study until like 9 or 8 p.m. And then they come, they eat like dinner in between and then they go to bed and then they just start the process all over again because college admission is so competitive in China, I'm sure in a lot of other countries as well. So that's why they utilize so much of that time just studying and extracurriculars and just sleep. Like that's all they do.
They're working harder there than I think I was
Learning algebra
learning
in
that.
third grade. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do think it kind of goes back to what we are talking about the psychological component to it because maybe if you're under so much pressure and so much stress, then it would impact your sleep and then also maybe make you see all-nighters as something normal, normalized or habitual.
Yeah, I mean, I know that just brings me to the topic. It's a little bit of a tangent, but the fact that I think kids this day and age, whether they're, in elementary all the way to age 33, I think I read a statistics like in that sort of age population, they're more depressed and stressed out now than they were in the 1950s, when when things were very different, and I think I see a lot of kids in my during my training during my pediatric clinics, and a lot of them would come in, complaining about headaches and muscle tension. And it turned out the underlying reason usually had something to do around being depressed or stressed out or some school stressor or pressure to get into the right college or get onto the right varsity team. So yeah, do you feel like that's going on in college right now, Kumal? Do you think it's like a big rat race that never seems to end? That's how I felt, and often it still seems to feel that way too.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that way, especially for people who are like pursuing higher education even after college, like pursuing grad school. In my case, I plan on pursuing medical school after college. So there are a lot of requirements that go into your college career before you like tackle that application process for medical school. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of competition at play, and also like balancing extracurriculars along with your rigorous course load. So yeah, I can definitely relate.
I'd love to hear a day in the life of you in college. Like, how would you describe a typical day for Komal Keerthy?
Typical day for me, I feel like, so I never schedule 8 a.m. classes because no. Um, I will wake up around me. I'll wake up around like 9, I think. That's like a pretty reasonable time. Um, I think.
You're
And
looking for me to approval, I think.
I'm just trying to justify as I go along. Um, some days I'll have like 9:30 classes or 10 o'clock classes depending on the day in the week. So and then I'll have classes maybe until like 2 or 3, and then I go to research for at least like 6 hours a week. So that would be like in 2 hour um, increments. And I'm part of an a cappella group, so we meet like 3 times a week, and our rehearsals are 2 hours a piece. So and then after that, like it'll probably be around like 9-10 p.m., and that's like when I'll start my homework.
Wow, that's
Takes me back.
it does, yeah.
And when I'm in college, I eat like two like huge meals a day. So I don't really snack. I just like
Mm,
I just eat like in big portions
yeah,
because there's like
wow.
no time to eat, and like I can't really like pack food in my bag, or I don't prioritize it. So that's like my only option.
I think that makes sense. Energy conservation, and a lot of the research is suggesting intermittent fasting, which is, not eating for long periods and then having two big meals is good. So I think that, if it works, why not? And on a busy day, on a busy schedule, I mean, we're kind of almost forced to do that, I think. So I totally think that's okay. As long as you feel like you have enough energy with all those things that you're doing, that is a lot.
Do you think that your all-nighters experience started in college or earlier in high school?
I think like I there was a glimpse of it in high school, like maybe during my junior year when I was taking a lot of APs,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a lot of AP exams that like the AP exams really were right next to each other. So like prioritizing study times for each of the classes was kind of difficult. Like it really overlapped, and yeah, I think like my time management has never really been like my strong suit. And I think that really plays a big role in whether you end up procrastinating or not. And in turn, plays a big role in whether you pull an all nighter or not.
You're saying, you feel bad about time management. I just want to say, though, that it sounds like you have a lot going on and you're trying to juggle a lot of different things and trying to get into medical school. And I know that you are doing really great in your academics and trying to do everything, which is awesome. And I want to sort of take some of I think that you're not alone. I know that in my clinics, I see a lot of college students that also complain a lot about sleep deprivation through the nights, and then how to deal with excessive sleepiness throughout the day. And and they also have a lot of irregular patterns, and as a result, you end up having less and less time over time. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that um, there's a lot of unique factors to college kids that I think are, making them a little bit more prone to this. And one of them we already talked about, which is sort of, just the physiological change where you're naturally inclined to go to sleep later due to a shift in your circadian system. The second would be, sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is sort of such a big component in getting not only to sleep, but getting also restful sleep that you would need for memory consolidation, right? So we need slow wave sleep and we need REM sleep for both procedural and declarative memory. So when you're not getting that sleep and you're constantly sort of in a sleep debt per se, then it's going to be harder to learn new material and also have sort of the same alertness you would have had if you were not sleep deprived. And a lot of the research is sort of suggesting that that has been done on sleep deprived adolescents, and they've shown that it's harder for them to process new information. It's harder for them to also recall old information that they've already sort of per se stored in their brains. So it's sort of not a win-win situation. So let's talk about maybe how we can remedy some of that sleep hygiene, and it's really kind of basic. I mean, I think this was a statistic back in 2014, but 70% of adolescents are either on a computer or cell phone or some gaming activity before bed, and all of those have been shown to sort of produce a delay in sleep, more frequent awakenings during the night as well, and waking up not feeling refreshed. So subjective sense of sleepiness throughout the day, and sometimes a lot of kids when see I call them kids, but young adults when I see them in clinics, they're not even aware that these fancy technologies are doing that to their sleep. So that's definitely one component. And also, when you have late classes, like you said, what time did you say your classes were in the evenings, Komal?
Well, I think the latest I've ever had a class, it like ended at 7, but usually like I'll have my classes end by 3. Because
Okay.
especially now that I'm an upperclassman.
Do you ever have like coffee or tea or energy drinks or anything like that to try to push through, classes or after class?
I've never really been much of a coffee drinker. I think I only started drinking coffee for the taste, and because there's a Starbucks literally in the middle of our residential area. So it kind of like forced me to try it out and stuff. And also, a lot of my friends are Starbucks enthusiasts. So it's like kind of hard to not like to like control myself when it comes to that. But I think I drink it just for the taste, not for its effects.
Yeah, and definitely coffee's a culture. I remember me, Ying Yang, and I used to go for coffee all the time or have tea, tea
It was
time.
our excuse to leave our library desk.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
oh, we
I
studied for
literally
3 hours. Let's go get
Yeah.
coffee.
And it was not the coffee that there was coffee in it, but it was also loaded with sugar. I remember getting mocha
Oh
frappuccinos,
yeah.
and
yes,
I
yes, I
think the
remember.
sugar also contributed to some awakenings there too. But yeah, I mean, coffee's a culture; it's a part of our lifestyle, and we may not even know, but that's definitely coffee can last in your system for up to 24 hours, especially if you're drinking it late into the night. So energy drinks, even just vitamin waters, and I had a friend in college right before our organic chemistry class that our organic chemistry class was sort of the like the you remember
It was
Ying,
the
it
it
was
was
like
the thing that either broke you in
yeah.
college or made you stronger.
Yeah, and it was like the exams that I think the average were always like 33% or 44% or something like that, and it
Yeah,
always
you
seemed
would
to
get a
get
D plus on the test and get a B plus after the curve.
yeah, exactly.
Oh my
So
God.
I think a lot of people were really nervous, including me, before those exams. But I remember one time, one of my friends actually, took a Red Bull, had some caffeine, then I started drinking green tea late into the night, and she actually started having heart palpitations and a headache, and had to go to the ER right before the right night of the exam. So I think that's yes.
I
Yeah.
raised my
Has
hand
to
because I was like, that's me. But then you said went to the ER, and I was like, no, that wasn't me.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is often, or drinking sodas before bed. That can, that's a part of sleep hygiene. That does affect your sleep and contribute to this sort of irregular sleep schedule. Because then what happens when you wake up after having a really poor night's of sleep? You're going to take naps in the afternoon and then not have time. Then you're going to push your day a little bit later and you start homework a little bit later or projects or something like that. So it ends up being a pretty vicious cycle. So I just don't think my point is it's not just you Komal, it's sort of the entire I went through it. I'm
The whole
sure
country
our
is
whole
kind of
country
this
is going through that.
all-nighter culture, yeah. And we were talking behind the scenes about how people even boast about it, but we can get into that later. So we thought, there's so much to cover, so we thought a great way to kind of kick off further discussion is to play a little game, a little interactive game. That was Komal's great idea. It's the Never Have I Ever. So Komal, do you want to kind of basically tell us how this game is going to work?
Yeah, so basically, I've like compiled a list of 15 things, or 15 experiences. So how we play this game is that each of us, we're gonna hold up all 10 fingers, and every time I um, read off one of these things, if you've done it, then you put down a finger. If you haven't done it, keep your fingers up. And the first person to put down all of their fingers loses.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
All right. This I like it. It's very reminiscent of collegey type games. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so I'm gonna kick it off. So never have I ever bragged about how little sleep I got the night before.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a vicious cycle. Like one friend will brag about it, and then the rest of us will start bragging about it. It's just like, you know,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so stupid to brag about it because like you're literally wrecking yourself.
I think in the medical culture, it's a really common thing to brag about. Like I just pulled because you have to pull 24-hour shifts where you
mm,
don't sleep. So
yeah.
it's often, it's kind of like a culture to say, I'm still functioning. I'm ready to go. I can
I'm
handle it.
invincible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I might have done it in that context.
I actually have friends who still do it now, and but I think when they say it, they don't get the same reaction as they used to. Like in college, when you say it, people will be like, "Wow!" But now, when people say it, at our age, people are like, "Oh, are you okay?" Yeah.
You can put it back up
Okay.
now.
Next question.
Yeah, so never have I ever chose binge watching a show over sleeping at a reasonable time.
Aww. Yeah, especially with Netflix and streaming sites, it's hard not to binge. I feel like it's almost marketed towards binging, like how it just automatically like does the next episode without you needing to press anything.
Yeah, you actually have to press something to stop it. And also, now there's a whole category on Netflix that says weekend binges or Saturday binges. So it's kind of like promoting this binge culture. So,
I think like we've been talking about all-nighters due to procrastination, but like now that like quarantine has happened, I feel like more and more people are experiencing like unintentional all-nighters due to how much screen time that they're having and like how much they're binge watching these shows.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
definitely like experienced that.
Yeah, it's almost like they now have this opportunity to binge so many things because they're seeking, right, something to pass the time, and then they like how many times have we called our friends and be like, "What show would you recommend for me to watch?" And then they list off all these shows, and you just start watching them. Yeah,
yeah.
so addicting. I'm not one of those people that has like good control, self-control. Like that's why you should never put a bag of chips in front of me because I will probably eat the half the bag without realizing it. Like that's something I've definitely been working on. So when you see binge watching as like a bag of chips, it's just so enjoyable. You just like can't stop. So I feel like it's a mind trick to get yourself to just be like, let's save these. Let's put them away. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It's kind of like even it's kind of so subconscious that we do it without even thinking. And I think in order to stop, we just have to say, okay, whoa, it's 11 o'clock or it's 12 o'clock. It's time to go to bed. And it's just that one little awareness thing that I think could help.
So never have I ever read a book over sleeping at a reasonable time.
Oh yeah, Harry Potter when I was a kid. Goblet of Fire. I remember I finished that
Yeah,
book in three
that was mine
days.
too. That, yeah. And the Babysitter's Club, which is now a show on Netflix, I saw, which I remember reading through the whole series as a little girl. And so I was super excited to see it on Netflix. But I'm like, isn't this a little, when I first saw it, I was thought, well, this must be for like a much younger kind of, group of
Trying to
people.
justify your watching this show, Nina.
Because I read that as, in my elementary days, but it's pretty sophisticated and has a lot of emotional sort of components and a lot of thoughts, so I was impressed. Going back to what stuff I'm watching on Netflix, that I accidentally binged because it took me back to my childhood days.
That's cute. I love that. Oh.
All right, next one. Never have I ever drank coffee to stay up throughout the night.
Ooh. That's a little different for me because coffee is such an interesting topic when it comes to staying up late. Yeah, for me personally, I don't use coffee to stay up late because I associate coffee as a morning drink, if that makes sense, not a night drink. So even though I understand logically that coffee helps people stay awake, it doesn't work for me. And my tolerance for caffeine is really high. So for me to stay awake, I use purely like physical will to stay awake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that brings to the point like a lot of people metabolize coffee differently. So, one cup of coffee for me might not be the same for Komal or for Yinging. So, it really just does vary by your metabolic differences and your genes too. So, I totally believe that. And even there have been times where, I've drank coffee and it made me more sleepy. And I think it's because it was sort of
Mm.
at the end of the day, and my sleep drive was just a little bit too high for the coffee to really work.
Yeah, no, I can relate to what you were just saying, Nina. Like I feel like I drink the coffee for the intent of like hoping that it'll keep me up later in the night, but it actually like makes me sleepy a lot of the times. And I think it's like maybe because the drinks that I get are too high in sugar and maybe I'm like crashing, or like you said, my sleep drive is probably too high and like one overrides the other.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think, coffee competes for the same receptors on the brain as adenosine, which promotes sleep. And adenosine starts building up the longer that we stay awake. So the longer that you're awake, if you have too much adenosine, coffee just ain't gonna do the trick unless you drink, a whole bunch, which I'm not recommending. So yes.
Never have I ever drank coffee and become so jittery that I could not focus on my work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think every coffee lover has experienced that at some point, especially when you're first dipping your toe into different types of coffee and you're like, "Oh, I can handle this." And you drink it and then you're like, "Oh, I feel weird." And your hands start shaking.
Yeah, I remember I used to drink a lot of coffee in medical school in the mornings to make it for 7 a.m. lectures before I started watching the videos later on, and I learned that was more effective. But anyway, when I did that in the morning, I naturally would I wouldn't even notice, but I think my foot would start tapping, and then like all my friends sitting next to me on the same table, they're like, "Come on, stop! What? You've had too much coffee." And I realized like, oh, I didn't even think about it, but it is making me jittery too. It wasn't only making me alert, but it definitely had this like other effects that I didn't want. So I think there are certainly negative effects to too much caffeine, even if it doesn't feel like that, but yeah, that's when I know I've had enough.
And different people have different sensitivity to coffee. Like I'll have a friend, she'll have like a little bit of coffee and then she'll start feeling jittery and heart palpitations right away. So in that case, I feel like maybe those people tend to not be as much of a coffee drinker, is my guess.
Yeah.
They don't feel good after they drink it.
Yeah, all the people that I know that really don't like coffee at all complain of exactly what you said, Ying, which is they get they just can't tolerate it, it seems. Too bad, more coffee for us. So,
I also think that like if you're already like pretty stressed to begin with,
Yeah.
and then like drinking coffee like right after that can maybe worsen like how you're feeling somatically.
yeah,
Yeah. It just makes me think about in college. I know a lot of people took what's that drug that keeps you alert?
Adderall.
Yeah, Adderall. Like Adderall is really popular, unfortunately, in our college. And then people would take it, but then that was my thought process. Like, but you're already so stressed and wired, and you're taking that. Like, what does that do to you
Yeah.
physically?
Yeah, I was reading, there's this epidemic of sort of misdiagnosis of ADHD among adolescents and young adults. And, Adderall and other stimulants are commonly prescribed for the diagnosis of ADHD. But, there's more research looking into that now and wondering whether it's actually not a primary ADHD process or a neurological process per se, but maybe it's because these kids are chronically sleep deprived where they don't have that, attention or focus that they normally would with adequate sleep. So that's definitely a huge interest of exploration. And yeah, and as a result, combining sort of stimulants with caffeine or soda and other things can definitely have a profound effect on your cardiovascular system and can certainly knock somebody into sort of high blood pressure or heart rate. And I know a lot of people that have gotten into that situation, so it's certainly not something to scoff at. But yeah, it's quite common with the growing diagnosis of ADHD in younger kids now.
Hmm.
So never have I ever written a really long paper the night before it was due.
Oh yeah. Uh, that was actually my biggest reason why I would pull on all-nighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, was the paper writing, especially in college and even in high school. I specifically have memories of like pulling like you know how they were had to be 10 pages, right?
Yeah.
Double
We
space and
had page
everything.
limits back
And I
then.
had to fill those 10 pages, and I would just remember trying to like pull up as many quotes from my references as I could to fill up the page because I was just pressed for time. It was really bad. And of course, the outcome is never as good, right, as if you were to have prepared the paper a long time ago. And so that's something that I learned in college was like if I get a paper, just start on it. You have like 3 months to work on it, but I always end up writing it 3 days before it's due for some reason. And so that's something I've always had to analyze for myself because you're basically like torturing your it's like you get the paper and then you forget about it or you try to put it to the wayside because probably you have all these other things going on that you rather focus on, and then when the paper comes you just start panicking and then you kind of regret, you go through that series of emotions of regret, right? Like, why did I put myself in this situation again? I said I wasn't going to do it this time. And then you start writing, and then of course I remember writing it and hearing the birds chirping as the sun's coming up, and it's due at like 11 a.m. that day, right? So I'm just like, oh my god, 2 more pages, just 2 more pages, and of course I submit it right before it's due, and you do feel the sense of like, wow, I did it, I'm so happy, right? You feel this like immediate like euphoria afterwards, but then of course when you get your grade, you're like, oh yeah, I knew I could have done better, you know, from experience.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's like, why?
I definitely can relate to that too. I feel like I would take an exam over writing a paper any day. Like I feel like I'm okay at writing. Like I don't think I'm like horrible at it, but it's just something like the finished product will be fine, but I think the process is just so it's like so what's the
Painful.
word? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so painful that like I just keep avoiding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it also just depends on, the topic. A lot of times, like in high school, there were like these dry historical topics and, things you just didn't really weren't interested in. And that's why we often procrastinated. But if it's something that I'm really interested or writing about now and I don't have the same feeling about it. Like I think, you find that when you see a topic that you love, you just get into this like mental creative flow and it just keeps going. And sometimes I do pull all-nighters as a result of just getting into this like creative flow.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Hmm.
Never have I ever napped so hard that I woke up with marks on my face and drool stains on my pillow.
Oh, yeah, that's a good nap.
I don't think I
Yeah.
have, but
You
I found
haven't?
my friends like red-handed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. At Hopkins, I'm sure every college has a version of this. It's called Hell Week, right? It's like the win week before all the last finals, before the year ends. And so
Mhm.
it's tradition at Hopkins for everyone to go to be in the library for like the whole week. And so you would wake up really early and secure your spot at the library. And the library
Which
is
is
also
really
open
hard to
24 hours.
get. Yeah.
Yeah, and the library is completely open. Like it never closes for Hell Week, and we have I think 5 levels, and it starts with like A all the way to D, and D is like a dungeon, literally a dungeon, because there's no sun, but not no sunlight. Like it's the basement versus A is like the ground level with the windows, and so everyone wanted to get a spot in A, B, and C. No one wanted to get a spot in D unless you wanted like alone time. But basically, to keep your spot, you would just sleep at your at the spot that you secured in the library. So literally, people would bring pillows to the library and just sleep in the library, and I would always see people sleeping and drooling, waking up with like pencil marks and like from their books or whatever. And so I think I did that a few times too,
Yeah,
just
and
because you're so exhausted.
I totally remember Hell Weekend level D. Another thing about level D is that it's scary to walk through there too because your footsteps, people get annoyed by the
Like,
footsteps.
shh.
Like, it's too much noise. Everyone's like on this high stress, like high strung, like, it's just even you can't make if you do decide to go to level D, you can't make any noise and I just don't know how that's possible considering they're camping out there with all of their things. They would have like blankets and all that stuff, but yeah, that definitely does bring back some memories.
Yeah.
I remember when I toured Hopkins as a high school as junior or something. Like I remember the tour guide mentioning that like you can't let a pin drop, otherwise you'll like anger everybody on the floor.
Yeah.
Never have I ever um, nap so hard that I thought I was in a different dimension after I woke up.
Oh, for sure. It's like you're in a fever dream. It's really weird.
I think like definitely like the night after an all-nighter, especially like your sleep drive is so hard and like you just like pass out after the exam. And once you wake up, I don't know, an absurd amount of time later, like you can't even like tell where you're at in like space and time.
Yeah, I remember that. Actually, that reminds me of a story when I was in high school, and I think, I had just, it was a really hard week. It was like AP exams, and I think it was Friday after I was almost done with most of my AP exams, and, but I was like Monday through Friday, I was just sort of like staying up, sleeping a little bit, studying, and all that stuff, and then Friday, I just crashed when I got home, like at 3 p.m. or something like that, and I was so tired. And when I woke up, it was dark outside, and I thought, oh, it must be early in the morning, and it must be time to go to school. So I literally took a shower, got ready, like got my things. I thought I had to go take an exam, and I went downstairs. And my parents, who like wake up naturally at like 5 a.m., they're like, "What are you doing? Today's Saturday." And I was like, "What?" What? I had no concept of like the time or anything just because I felt like I had slept so long. And so that was when I felt like I was on a totally different dimension after sleep. But
Yeah, it's really crazy how your brain works, it almost tricks you. Because I've had moments where it's really weird. I feel like time went by longer than it really did. Like it's almost felt like I was time traveling, but I'm just in my groggy state of being because, like you said, you crash after you pull an all-nighter, so you sleep, and then you think no time has passed, and you wake up, and then it's already been like 12 hours or something. Or the opposite happens, where you go to sleep and you think you slept for so long, but only 10 minutes passed.
yeah, and I think Ying and I talked about this once, but when you're in dreams, it also changes the perception of time also. And I know we've talked about like, having I had a really intricate or vivid dream, and it felt like, it was this long story that just spanned your whole like, year in your life in your dream. And then you wake up and it was like, wait, I think I was only sleeping for half an hour. So it's crazy how that time perception happens, with just dreaming too.
Yeah, I think that would be really great to talk about that more because I don't know, have you guys ever had dreams where you thought you woke up? So you got up, made your bed, brushed your teeth, and did like what you were supposed to do that day, and then you realize you're in a dream, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, that's so weird. I thought I had already gotten up. I don't know if that happens to you
Yeah,
guys.
I know that definitely happens to me. Like I'll dream about very real life scenarios, and like I especially if especially happens like when I'm stressed out about something school
Yes.
related. So like I'll think that I didn't I like I overslept for my exam or something, but that's like my dream. And then I wake up like all petrified and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Exactly.
That exam dream just never tends to go away, no matter how, like I've gone through a lot of exams, board exams, medical school exams, step exams, but I still have dreams of just exams from high school. I don't know why. Like I most commonly dream about exams in like high school or something like that rather than, you know, not to belittle those exams, but like I've had more recent and kind of more monumental exams, and they still don't show up in my dreams. I don't know if it's something about like those childhood like imprinting that happens when you have to take exams at such an early age, and the stress that's associated with that is really you're just more sensitive to at that time than when you're older. It's kind of like when you get older, you just not that I don't get nervous before exams now, but it just seems more like something that I've done for a long time, and it just seems like, I'm not as nervous. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I think a lot of the stress associated with it that shows up in my dream is in the childhood context.
I think it's because we had pop quizzes when we were kids, but we didn't have pop quizzes as adults. And
Oh, yeah,
so that
that's
fear
true.
of like suddenly you have a test in front of you that you didn't prepare for and you have to now know all the material, that freaks me out. So I always have dreams of having a test I didn't know was planned and having it in front of me.
Yeah.
I only
Test.
heard about pop quizzes on TV. Like I don't think I've ever had a pop quiz.
we would have them at my high school, especially for like English class. Like the teacher would test if you've read the book.
Yeah.
Like, oh, chapter 5 is due today. Here's a test on what happened in chapter 5. And we're like, oh no, we didn't read it. And you just try to guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
clever tactic.
I did have pop quizzes and they were not a, they, I wasn't looking forward to them. Let's say that.
Yeah. I feel like me and Nana's generation was more like fear driven
Yeah.
than maybe present generation. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think maybe the culture has shifted. I feel like there's more of, I think we have a long way to go in terms of promoting wellness in young adults, children, and adolescents. But I think when we were growing up, it was more of a fear tactic, fear culture. But I think, there are stressors of different things now. In my opinion, I don't know, one of the things I think about is, knowledge is at your fingertips, right? So you can go on our podcast channel and learn a lot of great stuff, or just kidding. Knowledge is really just one click away. So I think there's a lot more pressure on the younger generation learning now, right? Because you have access to all this knowledge. Whereas I remember, like I remember having to do a project on beluga whales when I was in elementary school, and I literally had to go to the library, go to the encyclopedia, find the whale section, look up the beluga section, like scan all those pages, and then like read them, and that's how you did your project. And that was when you were in third or fourth grade, when the internet was not like what it is now, right? Where kids are just constantly on iPads.
Went down memory lane there.
We're not dating ourselves at all.
No.
All right. Never have I ever fallen asleep during class.
Yes. And I always would get caught by the professor, and I would feel so bad because you're trying so hard to keep your eyes open, and like you're like looking. You probably look like you're just like so mad because, and I remember my eyes were closing as the professor was looking at me, and I was like, and I couldn't stop it because I was so tired.
Yeah.
It's the
I
worst.
think I think it was more common for me to do that like in residency, where I would pull like all-nighters and then be expected to go to like a morning lecture. And come on, I mean, it's I couldn't help it. I mean, I'm sleep deprived, and but I think they were probably a little bit more understanding than Ying Ying's, where they were zeroing in on you. I hope, anyways. I wasn't. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but we'll see.
Yeah. Do you catch a lot of people in your classes, Como, falling asleep, or do they just sleep in the back as they did with us?
Um, I think like in the like bigger lecture style classes, so like during my freshman and sophomore year, I saw it a lot more frequently. Um, I think like one of my like good friends in particular is um definitely guilty of sleeping in class. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I
in
don't
our
think
def
I've done it
oh,
myself.
oh, not for yourself?
I don't think I've done it
That's
myself. No.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear from our viewers. How many of you guys have fallen asleep in the day and age of Zoom classes? I mean, I feel like you're in your own home. You're probably in your recliner chair. You could put a blankie on you. Nobody would know. You could be in your sort of, fluffy slippers, fall asleep. I'm sure that's happening a lot more now, but definitely love to hear from you guys if that's true or not true.
Never have I ever stress ate while cram studying for an exam.
Oh, I did that all the time. Even if I try to eat like healthy foods like nuts, like I'll eat too many nuts or I'll just like eat too much that night. And I know like when I was doing night shifts in residency, then people would order pizzas or just order tons of food to help stay awake. And so you're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna eat, and just because it's there and to stay help you stay awake. So I definitely have done that in the past, which is one of the reasons why I really don't like all-nighters either, because you just end up consuming so much more than you would have if you were just sleeping.
There's a comment for you, Como, to like see that.
And if so, what's your favorite foods?
Okay, so yeah, I put my finger down for binge eating while studying, but I think I could also go like the complete like polar opposite as well. Like especially if I'm like really in the zone with studying, I'll just like block out all other sensory stimuli and just like focus on my work and like forget about all my meals. So like I could go either way, honestly.
You know what, that it reminds me that of, two kinds of people I know and how they handle stress, like two groups. I mean, I think there's the group that I fall in, which is that I will stress eat in times of stress. Like I will like probably choose bad options, unhealthier options, kind of quick feel good like chocolate or whatever. But and that's how one of the reasons I ended up gaining weight in residency during that high stress period, which we can talk about at a later episode. But then there's the other type of people whom maybe you fall into, Como, that naturally don't want to eat during stress and they don't have an appetite and they end up losing weight. Like I had a friend who we were friends in medical school, and then we saw each other close to the end of our intern year. We visited each other, and she had lost a ton of weight, and I was like, how did you do it? She was like, I was just under a lot of stress and I just couldn't eat. And so that was really it was really surprising for me to see. I mean, I guess it's just in terms of the fact that there's so many different coping mechanisms out there, or how you respond to stress.
Yeah, I think for me, the only thing I would stress eat would be sweets. Yeah, would be like Nutella.
Never have I ever been told that I look sick because of the depth of my dark circles.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Like, sweetie, are you okay? Because like,
Are you sick? Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You look tired this morning. Yeah, I've definitely gotten that. Yeah.
yeah. But I feel like that might also be if like I don't wake up in time to put on makeup and then I go to class and then people see me and they think I look different, so then they wonder if I'm sick. So I think that might also be part of it.
But it's natural. I mean, sleep deprivation does that. I mean, it makes you feel and look tired. I mean, it's hard to have bright eyes, right, when you're half asleep, and it is, you're just not as alert. I mean, I think that also it just goes to show how much like mood plays a big role in how you look and how you feel. And I think that, sometimes when people are just like high, I notice like just high energy, got a lot of rest, they're just like smiling all day, they just like exude energy and they just look good as a result. Just look, more sort of inviting. And I think that's the kind of look that I think we're all going for, and it's natural to not have that when you're just sleep deprived. Did we all lose at the same time?
no, I still have one finger
FOMO
up.
comes on top.
How did I win? I feel like I wrote these.
I think that was a really good cover of all the things that people who pull on nurse or experienced and can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for taking us back to memory lane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
If you like what you see, remember to subscribe to our channel and press the like button so you get updates on new content and videos. And until then, sleep on it, guys.
Yeah, or just go to sleep. Don't pull that all-nighter. And thank you, Komal. This was fun.
Thank you, Kamal.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks
You
for
too.
having me, guys.